Welcome to the 909th meeting of the Board of Directors of MSAD number 27. Roll call, please.
Keith Jandro.
Here.
Shannon Lugden.
Here.
Abby Pooler, not here. Dave Susi.
Here.
Tanya Wazin.
Here.
Gary Sibley.
Here.
Sarah Ashley.
Here.
And our 2 student reps are here as well. Before we begin, Mr. Chairman, I just think it would be appropriate at this time to offer condolences to the family of Ethan Townsend. This is our first meeting since that tragic accident occurred, and I just think that on behalf of the entire district, we definitely want to support the family as best that we can and offer our condolences, and if it's all right with everyone, I'd like to have a moment of silence for Ethan at this time. Thank you. Also, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to welcome our new board members to the meeting. They are official on our website, so their information is there on the website for the public to access. For Sub-District 2, we have Shannon Lugden, who's here. Welcome, Shannon. For Sub-District 4, 5, and 6, we have Tanya Wazin, and we also have David Susi. And I don't know if any one of you wants to just say a few words or say no, and that's okay. I'd just like to offer a moment to hear from one of you if you'd like.
Happy to serve.
Just a few words, Ben.
Sure.
I want to thank, for the benefit of the TV cameras, those folks who supported me, and I want to formally congratulate you.
Yes.
Tanya, Shannon, of course. I've discovered that winning a seat on the school board doesn't carry any of the satisfaction that winning a lawsuit does, or winning the lottery or anything like that. There isn't much inclination to celebrate. It's more of a kind of an inclination for sober reflection. This was a very close election. The town manager said it was the closest ever, and also the biggest turnout ever, which is a hint about what's going on in town and in the community at large, the other communities involved. There's a lot of concern. There's a lot of division, obviously. And we had 4 candidates for 2 posts for positions where traditionally you couldn't give the post away. You had to beg people to take it. So in some respects that's good, but it's also kind of daunting. I didn't know Leroy Mckenzie, but it's clear to me that a lot of people did support him, and he certainly put his heart into his service on the board and into his campaign. And so, of course, that's to be admired. And I take no satisfaction in unseating Toby Jandro, I mean. I think he proved from the distance, from where I was watching it, which is quite a distance away, he proved himself to be an effective advocate, and he was a critical thinker, and he took principled positions, and some of them were unpopular, and some of them, in my estimation, were really courageous. So I assume this seat on the board, replacing those 2 fine people, with mixed feelings, and I think with a healthy dose of humility. But I'm looking forward to working with all of the board members. We've obviously got a lot of hard work ahead of us. I don't know, but if you remember, but a couple of years ago, if you turned on the TV, you couldn't get away from those ads where all the employers with an advertising budget put their employees together, looked at the TV camera and said, "We're all in this together." And every time you turn on the TV, there was somebody saying, "We're all in this together." I haven't heard that in a while. It's been a long time, and the attitude certainly, I think, has changed. And sometimes it feels more like the attitude is, we're all in it for ourselves, and the devil take the hindmost. But we can't get away from, I think, the simple, practical reality that we're all in this together. And when the chips are down, we can only look to each other for support. And so I intend, in my work on the board, to make it a priority to maintain a working relationship with all the board members and with the staff to the extent we interact. I don't expect that we're always going to agree. That's to be expected, I think. I hope to be able to disagree without being disagreeable, and regardless of the result of a contested matter, once resolved, I hope I can get on board and put it behind me. And if I'm not doing a great job of that, I hope you'll remind me. Obviously, I've got a lot to learn as a new board member, and I want to get down to that, so thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ben, for the opportunity to make a speech.
Thank you.
From the board.
It's a good segue too to thanking our former board members. We'd like to thank Leroy Mckenzie, Toby Jandro, and Isabel Loze for their time on the board. Toby served 6 years, Leroy just under a year, and Isabel about a year. So we appreciate them as well, and hope that they're enjoying their Monday nights now that they're not with us.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo what Ben said, to thank Toby and Leroy if they're watching. While we didn't always agree, we did have healthy debate. Sometimes it bordered on an unhealthy debate, but we had debate nonetheless. And we're definitely not here to just go with the flow and, you know, just be a rubber stamp for whatever takes place. We're here to think critically and objectively. So just to kind of follow up on what you said, Dave, about the word daunting, I couldn't think of a better word for becoming a school board member at this time of year. We're going to talk about the budget later on, and that's probably one of the most daunting things you'll come across as a school board member, is trying to understand. It's going to take probably a couple of years if you're willing to tough it out to really understand the ins and the outs of school finance. Some of us have been on here for quite some time, and we're still learning about school finance. So I want to thank you guys for stepping up to the challenge, and hopefully we can set a little bit better tone for our board member relations, which will also trickle down throughout the district and the community, I think. So
We're all in this together.
with that being said, we have adjustments to the agenda.
I did give you a new agenda. It's white, and it has 2 adjustments on it. So if you're following along, I'll use the white one instead of the pink one. Under new business, items for information, resignations, we're going to add resignation of a part-time interventionist who's also a part-time adult ed instructor. And also under new business, items for information, new hires, we're going to add CHS night custodian.
Do we have a motion to add the adjustments to the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Sarah, second? Second. Gary, all in favor? None opposed? Okay, period of public participation. Do we have a sign-up sheet out?
Yeah, we did.
The top of it.
At the top of the bookshelf.
Okay. That was easy. Have nobody want to speak? All right, approval of the meeting minutes of the regular meeting, 908th meeting on March 15th, 2022.
So moved.
Moved by Gary,
I'll second.
seconded by Sarah. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? So I think we have a little dilemma here
You don't,
because we got so many new board members
Right.
that weren't present at the next board meeting.
Right.
Anybody have any suggestions? We want to have you folks, did you folks watch the last meeting?
Not all of it, no.
Same here.
well, if there's no opposition, I'll vote in
Right.
favor of it, if that'll help you.
Very good. Same as.
They're good minutes.
I will. I'm in favor. Very good. Minutes are approved. All right, on to the approval of the financial statements for February 2022.
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved by Gary, seconded by Sarah. Any discussion? Questions? All those in favor?
Well, I'll do likewise.
Any opposed? None opposed, motion passes. Okay, item number 8, presentation regarding Valley Mustangs.
So we have some guests in the audience, and among those guests is Jean Ann Thomas, who's the president of the Valley Mustangs Football Club, and they would like to present something to you all for consideration. So with that being said, I'm going to turn the floor over to Jean Ann.
Hi, I'm Jean Thomas. I'm president of the Valley Mustangs, like Ben said. I'm here to present to you for consideration of allowing the Valley Mustangs to become part of the school, be part of the MPA. So the varsity club would become part of the MPA and would play the other MPA schools. And we would like also that our JV team, which is the middle school, would also become part of the school as well. We have about 31 kids, I should say, on the current football team. We would give you all of the equipment. So all of the equipment is about 40 plus helmets. We have the shoulder pads, the uniform padding, all of flag football equipment, and Mooney did do a grant and we got some brand new equipment. And some of our uniforms. Our uniforms currently are the Valley Mustangs color. We would give that to you, and if you would choose to decide to change the colors and if the Mustangs would change the name, then that's fine. We would have to order some new uniforms. But that would be a total of about $22,000 to $25,000 worth of equipment. And we would, the kids that play, they would supply their own cleats, their gloves, their conforming pads, and mouthpieces. One of the greatest hurdles when it comes to starting a sport in the school is usually the venue, so the fields. We've been offered, Madawaska is offering to use one of their fields. Fort Kent would use one of the fields behind us, so either the soccer field here or at the elementary school. And then Wisdom also said that they would allow us to use their field if, we don't know if it's the right size, but we would definitely check that. We did meet with the ADs, all 3 ADs, and all 3 ADs are on board. They would like to see it part of the school system. We would be an 8-man. Right now we're 11-man football. We would bring it down to 8-man football. So we would have the numbers for the kids. It would work. We would continue, instead of being a Mustangs board, we would continue as a booster club. So we would continue doing all the fundraising. We would continue doing, pretty much everything that we're doing, we would continue. The only thing that we would need really is a school bus. So our coaches are willing to stay on. They would obviously have to apply for the job, and they would go through the background checks that are needed. So right now we have Coach Vince, and we have Coach Ron, and we have Coach Booney. I think Booney would stay on. I know his son is graduating, but he's staying on with us. He doesn't have a choice. And all of the Mustang board would stay on as well to help out with that fundraising. It is a big deal to obviously offset some of the costs of, because we still going to need uniforms, we're still going to need some new helmets at some point, so we would continue to do that for us. Let me see. So we did a quick little survey online just to try to see if there was still some interest in what we had for interest for kids to join back for next year. And we had about 25 people who participated in about 3 days. 50% of them is Madawaska, 50% of them is Fort Kent. We had about 10% that was Wisdom. There was 2 boys that are interested in coming back. So we know that there is interest. We did a sign up. I know you were.
So sign up sheet was just hung up. It was on Friday afternoon. You guys probably heard some of the announcements there, but just in that amount of time here at the middle high school for grades 7 through 12, we had 9 new names signed up, basically from Friday afternoon until about the end of the day today. Like I said, a couple of them I've spoken to because I have helped out with the wrestling team in the past, so I knew of 2 of them, but the others are also even new names to me in that aspect. So.
In the packet, I think you gave them right then. Okay. So So in the packet, I gave you a couple of balance sheets. One is what the current view of what we are, and that's on page 3, showing you the expenses and our income that we're currently doing. So we will continue with the concessions. We can continue with the sponsorships that we go after. We do raffle tickets. We would continue that. The past couple of years, we haven't been able to do the Madawaska Trade Show. We are doing it this coming April 23, 24. That is one of our biggest fundraisers. And then we would do other fundraisers if we have to. The helmets are only good for 10 years, if being used or not. So we would suggest buying like 5 every single year, so that we're not stuck buying 40 of them all at once, which is what we did, and we ended up, it was $12,000. It's not fun. It's not fun writing that check out. Booney is our shopper of our helmets, and he actually did buy the best of the best. So they were about $250 a piece. So that is all part of the expenses on that sheet. If we would become the MPA, I did a quick, page 4 is, we had Holton help us out, Holton Hodgson. They gave us what their current costs are back when they started in 2012. So I put in there what the transportation costs would be, coaching, what the officiating would be. The coaching is based on Dexter's costs of what they pay their coaches. Officiating is per the MPA. Those are costs that MPA actually tells you how much we have to pay. I put in there the equipment, the uniforms, other supplies. Our safety and our security is very important to us, so our coaches actually go through USA Football for all their training. They need to do concussion training. We always have either EMTs there or a, what do they call them? Like a nurse or something there. What is it?
Athletic training.
An athletic trainer, that's it. Sorry, guys. It's like I haven't done this speech like 2 other times. Sorry. And then our income obviously would continue. We don't see that it would go down. We actually feel that we could probably even do better. COVID has hit us pretty hard as an organization. So we've kind of been running day to day on our finances. I also put in there what are safety and risk factors, because that is a big deal for a lot of parents when playing contact sports. The national average for football is about 3.85 out of 1,000 participations. But if we take that in comparison to soccer, the boys' soccer is at 1.83, and girls' soccer is at 2.72, and wrestling is at 2.52. Most of the injuries when it comes to the football is pretty much strain and sprains. So I did put that information in there so that you guys have that to reference. Obviously, sports are a big deal. It makes the kids actually pay attention to their homework. They become better people. And we just want this to continue and become part of the sports. Right now, we're part of the Maine Independent Football League. We're actually down to 4 teams. That's including us. If we would become part of the MPA, that would bring us up to 8 teams, and we would have 4 home games and 4 away games. My husband is a CDL licensed driver, so he is willing to be the bus driver because we know that that is a big deal and it's a shortage to all of the schools. And he can actually drive the Valley Unified Bus. So, you know, if that's part of a problem, then we can certainly solve that. The 4 teams, the furthest we would go is probably Mount View in Thorndike. Everything else would be closer, so we can play Holton. Again, the boys have played Holton before in the past. Millinocket, Dexter. So those are different sport, you know, we want to be able to offer the boys more, boys and girls. So that's what we want to offer to you guys. I think I covered it all.
Gina, just for the board to understand the financials, it looks like what you guys are projecting in fundraising, looks like it can cover
Yes.
the entire fee, so the cost of the school districts will be minimal,
That's correct.
based on your projections.
I think the biggest issue that we have is, and we've had this, our coaches actually go and actually pick up every single kid and bring them to practice or bring them on, on the trips. I think one of the biggest things is the school bus, so we can get them all down there to wherever. So, and only having 4 teams to play, our middle school team has, they're 3. So really they played Caribou 3 times and they played South China 3 times. So it's not, to me, it's not that fun for them to do that, play the same teams over and over again.
So the proposal is what the MPA calls a cooperative team agreement. Because Valley Unified was founded on the Valley being represented, this is what the Valley Mustangs would like to continue. So being a Valley Unified team under a cooperative agreement. I was going to call now that all 3 boards have had the presentation, I was going to call a meeting with the athletic directors later this week and go over some fine-tuned detail questions that I have. I do believe that under a cooperative agreement, one district has to be the lead. So one district has to be the employer, the coaches, has to be the one who determines who assigns the bus drivers, that type of thing. All the other stuff is easy. If we do a rotation of game, venue, and I mean, that's easy to do between the districts, but somebody has to be that fiscal agent, if you will. And we have to figure out who that's going to be or who the athletic directors are going to recommend that becomes. But aside from that, it would just need your approval, and I'm not advocating we approve tonight because we probably have more questions that need to be answered. But in order for that cooperative agreement to be approved by the MPA, all 3 school boards have to approve it, or at least 2 of them. If only 2 want to move forward with it, you can move forward with 2 out of the Valley Unified partners. And then they have to have their answer at the MPA by May. So at our next board meeting, if we're going to consider this for next fall, we would have to take action on that next meeting. So that gives us a month to email questions and have more information come from me and the athletic director specific to, okay, who's going to run point on this, and I have some other questions too that I just want to work out. I will connect with the Holton and Hodgson do this through a cooperative agreement, so I just have some questions about that as well. But I don't know if the board has any questions for Jean Ann or the Mustangs while they're here tonight.
When does your season begin?
We start practicing in August, games start in September.
The MPA season allows practices to start this coming year, but August 15th is when preseason is allowed to start.
And previously, with the Maine Independent Football League, the practices, I believe we were starting like June, July, just, we call them like combines, like just get the kids interested in it.
Yeah.
Time them, see how fast they work, kind of race your buddy kind of stuff.
Yep.
And then I think it was in September, October is when the game started. Our last game was in November, if I remember right.
At one point.
And just to add, we won the championship last year, just so it was a long time coming.
2012.
Yeah, and for especially like these 3 right here, former players, I've watched these 2 play from 6th grade, going to Holton, getting everything handed to us, like to finally being a dominant team. It was very, very, very cool to be a part of, and just to watch the maturity level come out of these kids. It is such a, I mean, I'm big into sports anyway, but football, for some reason, it's got a spot for everybody. I don't care if you're 6 feet tall or you're 4 feet tall. Any kid can play. You can find a spot for them. It works for all of them. It doesn't matter if you're fast, if you're slow, you're strong, or you get winded easy. It's a spot for you, 100%. I've yet to see a kid where we've turned them away because couldn't make it. They've all excelled. Just the greediness that you need to become a football player. There isn't very many that are willing to do it because you've got to be kind of hard-nosed. And I think a lot of that is almost lacking, for a better term. So I do think it would be a very good program to add to schools just based on that. Because, you know, I mean, there's soccer, okay, if you're a lean, fast kid, you got soccer, you can run back and forth all day. A lot of these kids, I wouldn't have been able to do it, no way. Football would have been right up my alley. Didn't have it available, you know, so it's an amazing opportunity for a lot of kids that wouldn't have a chance to become athletic superstars. They would actually have a venue to excel at that, so I think it would be a good thing to get into.
And
Just wanted, if I could take, so just recognize, Looney pointed out these three, but we have Lucas and Xander, who are two of our graduating seniors on the team, and then also Gibson would be a returning player. So like I said, just some of our current players who came as well.
No, this is great. I think it's not often we have an opportunity to add such a valuable piece to either just to our overall programming or just adds such value to our school system. I think across the whole valley, it's a win for everybody. I do think there's good questions that need to be asked, and we're probably going to come back to the next board meeting, maybe better equipped to ask more questions. So I think a lot of it's going to be financial related, transportation, and how that's all going to work out with the budget. If and when, let's just say, the boosters are no longer in a position to finance that sort of effort, I think there are other resources out there, and you'll see that across the valley, we could probably all come together to support that type of program. So it's definitely encouraging.
Keith, could I ask you a question while I have you? I haven't followed it all that much, but everything I've heard about the Valley Mustangs is that they're really great. And so why would you want to change it, other than getting a school bus?
Well, we're down to 4 teams. So,
How would this
and
solve that problem? How would being with Valley Unified solve that problem
we
mechanically?
would end up playing 8 teams.
8
We can
teams.
play up to 8 teams. So we would be able to do 4 home games and then 4 away. Right now, the boys played, I think, each team twice for the varsity, but our middle school was 3 times each.
The 8
Okay.
teams are, the way, just in the last couple of years, 8-man football has become more popular in Maine. There's currently 26 high schools in Maine that play 8-man football versus 11. So the 8 we're talking about are actually just what they call
Local.
small school North Division. So there's those teams there's a small school South Division, large for small and that. So just like when we play Caribou in another sport, we don't necessarily have to limit it just to the small school division. You can play across classes, but it's a growing opportunity because 8-man is easier for districts of our size to put together a roster. Like I said, we played 11-man football this year, and you can ask these guys, like I said, they put a lot of effort into it, and they pulled it out, but it's a tiring game when you're playing defense and offense both sides of 11-man. And 8-man, which we already play at the middle school level, it's an easier rotation. And like I said, there are 26 teams in the state that competed last year in that season, so there is available competition as well. And like Gene said, it's one of our teams, the varsity program, the high schoolers plays in Berlin, New Hampshire. It's a little bit of a trip. Like I said, when we drive past a bunch of teams that I can see us playing, like I said, Holton, Stearns, over in Millinocket, Lincoln, Orono, we drive right past them all to go to those current games. So it's, like I said, better opportunity for better competition and just more diversity of play, like I said, and more longevity. Because it seems like this football in Maine is not disappearing. It's changing a little bit, but it's not. In our league, unfortunately, is under a little stress.
Right. Our league went from 10, I think it was either 8 or 10 teams down to 4.
Yeah.
3 of which are now in the MPA. Madomic Valley, Holton, and Millinocket all were part of our league. So.
So they
It's kind of
can't,
growing.
as an independent entity, they can't play the MPA sanctioned teams. So what they're proposing
Right.
is, let's go MPA sanctioned and play those teams.
Under the MPA umbrella.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Serwa, do you see an issue with potentially losing some students to football from our other sports programs?
I don't, because we offer dual sport enrollment in the district, so I think it could actually expand opportunities for the kids. These boys already play with the Mustangs anyway, so they're, you know, our kids are already playing for them. So I don't think we'd be stealing from one pool of candidates. Or
I can add comments.
Josh, go ahead.
In addition to that, the type of athlete that generally plays football is not your particular soccer player. Coach pointed that out. So what the football program actually will do for us is it's going to bolster 2 of our other programs that are currently that don't have the numbers that they used to. They'll increase the numbers of the wrestling program, and it also increases the numbers of the track and field program. And a perfect example is Gibson. Gibson came to us as a football player, and then through talking with me, he learned that wrestling and track are the precursors to get you in shape for football. So we went from turning Gibson into a single sport athlete to a 3-sport athlete. And we have other athletes as well that have now joined the track team because they want to get ready for football season. So the type of, yes, there may be 1 or 2 that might have played soccer that will go to football, but overall, the football player is a different breed than a soccer player, and it will bolster other programs as well. Lucas can attest to that, being one of our best wrestlers in the state. And wrestling is, it's a precursor and gets you ready for football.
It's great. Anybody else have any questions?
Thank you very much, guys.
Yes, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Feel free to stay for the rest of the meeting.
Superintendent updates and notifications.
I just have 2 notifications. First one I have is just a congratulations to the drama team. They actually placed runner-up at the drama festival, and so congratulations to them. Mr. Clapp was showing off his trophy today, and very nice. And according to Mr. Clapp, they probably should have ended up first place, but that all comes down to judging and that type of thing. So he's a little biased. So congratulations to the drama team. Second update I have is just for you all to kind of mark your calendar. Your calendar's already marked. We have the last meeting of the school year, June 20, is our last 2022-23 meeting, and I just want you to note that during that meeting, Main School Management will be sending their executive director, Steve Bailey, actually has agreed to come here for the first portion of that meeting to just kind of do a refresher on the ins and outs of being a board member. We felt that with the large turnover of board members, our 3 new members here, Abby's still very new as well. We felt that it was a good opportunity to kind of just go through the nuts and bolts and ask questions from Main School Management about what this role should be and how we can serve the office to the best of our ability. So those are the only updates I have.
All right. Okay, item B, recruitment brochure and teacher testimonials.
So I'm just going to kick this off, and then I'm going to punt to Mr. Karen to do the bulk of the lifting here. We've already spoken to you all about our desire, our need to bolster our recruitment efforts, not only for teachers but employees to the district. And so we've been working on this initiative for the better part of the year in bits and pieces, and 3 big pieces are coming together now for potential candidates who apply to the district. So right now we have some vacancies. When somebody submits an application to the district, automatically they're getting a letter that's being sent back to them saying thank you for applying while we consider your application, and they're being redirected on that letter to a couple of new pieces of selling points for the district. Mr. Karen, is that a big kickoff for you?
Yeah, it sure is. So, yeah, Mr. Sewer is correct that this follow-up letter, once an application is complete, will actually be a second step. I want to just back up a little bit and tell you that we have also contracted with Frontline for Education, which allows us to have an online application that you can start completing. If you need to step away, you can do that. You don't have to complete it all in one setting, but once you've done that, everything is automated. The tracking system, notices back to the applicant, we need letters of reference, we need a copy of your transcripts. that all becomes automated. Once we have a complete package, then we have put together a letter which draws the candidate's attention to a brochure that really acquaints them with living and working in the greater SAD 27 area. And this is something for which I wrote the narrative and then worked with Leanne Netto, and she designed the brochure based on photos that she was able to find. So we talk a little bit about our purpose, and that really focuses on future-ready schools. We talk about our core values, but we talk about them from the adult perspective. And then we move into discussions about our philosophy, and we talk a lot about the collaboration that goes on and how that fuels innovation. And then we talk about our schools and how special they are, all the opportunities that are available to our students in our schools. And then we switch over and we talk about our teachers. And really we brag about our teachers. We brag about, for example, the number of people who have been nominated for Aroostook County Teacher of the Year, the number who have won. That number, by the way, is 3 since 2014. And so we have an incredible faculty. We talk a little bit about them, the mix of veteran and newcomers, people who have lived here most of their lives, people who have come from other areas and even other fields, so that we're really communicating to candidates that, you know, we're wide open. And then we talk about our students, and we really talk about them as being eager and engaged. And we talk about the significant percentage of students who participate in extracurricular activities, who participate in early college, things like that. And then we talk about our goal relative to what we want to accomplish. We talk about really transforming the teaching and learning experience. That's what we're all about. We talk about the process that we follow in doing that. We focus on shared leadership. And then we really talk about the kind of educator that we're looking for. And then finally, and this is something that I've long felt that we needed to do, we need to stop apologizing for being located in northern Maine, and we need to really accentuate all the unique amenities that our communities offer and that our greater region offers. So we really spend a lot of time talking about this region and how really unique and special it is, and we bill it as one of the best places in Maine and New England to really live, work, and raise a family. We talk about safe schools, safe communities, and we include a lot of photos that feature for example, Lonesome Pine Trails, Fish River Falls, the University of Maine at Fort Kent Golf Course, the Fort Kent Outdoor Center, of course the Muskie Derby. And so we're really trying to communicate to people that this is a special place, and if you are really into a metropolitan lifestyle, this may not be the place for you, but we are trying to attract people who would find the allure of this region and really the strength of this school system very appealing. So that brochure now appears on the employment section of our webpage. That too is newly designed, much more modern, much more action-oriented than our old designs, which were really flat. And what we're trying to do is move from a very passive process of recruiting teaching candidates to our region, whether they're living right in our region or whether they're from afar. We're trying to be much more proactive and really focusing on the tremendous number of assets in this region. The other thing that that letter will do is it will link to 5 teacher interviews that were filmed with current staff. And each staff member was asked to focus on a different facet of living and working and a different strength of living and working, or really working in SAD 27. Jocelyn Socia, for example, talks about shared leadership, and that would be more toward the end. Then if you went down to the last minute or so, she'll talk about shared leadership and the benefit that has to staff and students.
Are the foundation of a good school community and a good climate, and our students feel that, and we're able to develop those relationships with our students as well, which helps them to succeed in their learning.
And if you can go Travis Lynn's, Ben, and again, to like maybe the last minute or so. Travis talks about being raised in Virginia, educated
My
at
name's
the
Travis
college
Lynn,
level in South
and
Carolina.
I teach
And at the end,
7th
he
grade
talks about
English
what attracted him to this area and what proficiency-based education, what effect that has on students and their attitudes about learning.
mistakes and learn from those mistakes as they develop their own growth mindset. Because of the proficiency-based system, students work to revisit standards and to improve in order to grow as learners. I find that in the proficiency-based system here that students take more chances than they do other places where I've taught.
The other 3 teachers that participated in this project were Scott Seveny, and K.N. Netto, and Kelly Markey. And they did a wonderful job as well. And I would certainly ask if you see them to thank them for taking part in this initiative, because it wasn't very comfortable for any of them. In fact, when we sent the final product to them, they said, oh my God, I don't want to watch myself. But they did a fantastic job, and they spoke from the heart and very sincerely about how positive an experience it is to work with their colleagues and the students and the parents in the greater SAD 27 region. And that's what we're trying to capture and convey, and we believe will attract people to our open teaching positions, or at least applicants, so that we have pools that we used to have back in the day, and that will help us in selecting the best possible candidates. So that, in a nutshell, is what we're up to.
Peter, I want to thank you for your work on this. The videos were filmed by Justin Taggett. Justin he's a substitute here in the building, but he seems to be here every day. And he did a wonderful job in capturing those videos. It has it has some music in the background. It's really well done. We're really hopeful that this takes our district and puts it a notch above what other districts are doing with respect to celebrating who we are and what we're all about. So we'll hope that we get a return on that investment for sure.
Well, with Frontline for Education, we also link to EduSpot K-12, and that literally announces our job openings to thousands upon thousands of educators who are in search of new teaching opportunities, and that's from across the country.
Thank you. Thank you to all the teachers that were involved in making that presentation. That's great. All right, on to administrator reports.
You have the 4 administrator reports from this month, Mr. Doucette, Mr. Anderson, AnnMarie, and Stacey. You also have 2 that were that didn't make it to your packets last meeting, so you do have Peter Associates' transportation report from last month and Mr. Netto's report from last month. They didn't make it in your packet last time. And most of those administrators are here if you have questions for them specific to their reports to you.
Did the new board members receive the reports?
They did. Shannon just this afternoon, but.
Very good. Anybody have any questions? All right. Thank you for those updates, by the way. Let's see, committee reports. Policy committee.
For policy committee, we have 2 policies that are ready for a second read. The first one is policy BCB, board member conflict of interest. It's also really related to policy BCC, nepotism. Just as a reminder, these are the 2 policies because of changes in legislation that allows for a board member's spouse to serve as a volunteer or receive a stipend for a short period of time that will sunset on July 1, 2024. That language is allowable in these policies. So you'll notice on both of them, BCB and BCC, you'll see a language in accordance with, and then it states the law, and then it has items that are allowable for that short period of time, and then there's a statement that it will sunset on 2024. So for this period of time, and until July 1, 2024, your spouses could volunteer, which has not been allowable under state statute. They would be allowed to volunteer or receive a stipend as long as they're not answering directly to an administrator. So that's allowable under these new policies. So there's those two that are directly related, and the third one that is ready for approval as well is the student wellness policy. And this is simply a revision to JL based on our 3-year food service audit. Every 3 years, our food service program gets audited, and this year they reminded us that our policy was last updated May 7, 2018, so it should be updated according to the schedule of audits that happen with our food service program. So those three are ready for approval and adoption.
Do we have a motion?
Can I ask a question first?
People,
Usually
after the motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved by Gary, seconded by Sarah. Any discussion? Sarah?
I was very confused reading this one when you have in different places saying these paragraphs sunset, and then in the replacing ones it also says it sunsets. I was just confused. But does it say the right thing?
It does say the right thing. It is confusing. It's a boilerplate from Main School
Right.
Management.
Okay.
And typically, I don't mess with the boilerplate
Yep.
because it's been lawyered up.
Mm-hmm.
No offense to lawyers.
I was just
Hey, don't look at me.
on that one.
I was looking at Tanya.
Jeez. Far from one.
But just the intent is to allow, and the language does allow for board members' spouses to volunteer or get a stipend as long as they're not answering to an immediate supervisor.
No changes from the first read.
No changes from the first read. It's still confusing.
Well, do we have any further discussion?
Is it just spouses or family members?
I believe it's just spouses.
It's just spouses.
Great question. I think in both the spouses of board members, yeah, it's just spouses.
Is it always, 'cause on the other one, immediate family, brother, sister, parent, son, or daughter, this doesn't apply to that anyway. So that's why this
Correct.
is the only
The
exception.
statute does not allow spouses.
Right.
It does allow other board
Yep.
members, other family members.
Very good. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? None opposed? Motion passes. Okay.
And you also have in your packet a whole bunch of A section policies. The policy committee met a couple of weeks ago. Toby and Abby, Mr. Doucette was there as well as Giselle. And we essentially went through all of the A section policies, just looking to update them. Some of these have not been updated since 2000. So obviously it's time. Some of them were updated just last year and they already need updates. You'll see some are very minimal. Policy AA, school district legal status, it's just eliminating those withdrawn members. Some of them don't have any changes at all, so we're just reviewing them, like policy AB. That's the people in their school district, no changes at all. Some of them are complete rewrites. Anything dealing with Title IX, harassment, sexual harassment, affirmative action, those are all tear downs and rewrites completely. And again, they are boilerplates right from Main School Management. I've crossed out the current language in those policies so that you can see what exactly the changes are. You can barely make it out, but the new language is in like a very light greenish font. It almost looks identical to, and maybe Jackie did print these in black and white, so you can't even see the new language. But those policies on harassment and sexual harassment, entirely different, and we had some good conversation around those policies. So I'm speaking specifically to ACAA and its procedure policy ACAAR. In the past, our Title IX coordinator and affirmative action officer, who is Jill Kelly, would essentially do the entire review and investigation all as the coordinator. Now, her job as the coordinator is to simply collect data under this new policy, and a trained investigator has to handle the investigation. And we actually, it just so happened that a few days after we looked this over, our law firm, Brandon Isaacson, pushed out some information to us and said, we have trained investigators for Title IX. And so I kicked this out to Toby and Abby, and they're both like, that's great. I mean, that's the best way to handle it with outside investigations, especially if it leads to a point where it should be investigated. When Jill's collecting her information, that would be sent to a trained investigator, and they would tell us if this is something that needs to be investigated under Title IX, or if it's something that just needs to be handled with regular school discipline because it doesn't meet the level of Title IX as it's defined now. I think it's like a 13-page procedure policy for so it's quite comprehensive. So with these A section policies, this is just a first read. I encourage you guys to just look them over. Probably use your electronic copy more than these paper copies, because you'll see the new language and what's been crossed out. And just let me know if you see anything that shouldn't or needs to be brought back to the policy committee. Policy committee approved all of these. They said it's good, but in order for it to be adopted by you all, it would have to be approved under second read next board meeting.
Now, this is pretty much mirrored off of what MSMA has.
This has all of the required A section policies, but it also includes what we have that's not required, but it's specific to us. So like school legal status, that's our legal status. That's specific to us. The majority of them, though, are required main policies.
Good. These are just first read policies, right?
These are just first read, all of these A section.
Good.
The last thing under this item, we're going to need to set up a policy meeting date to examine B policies. But I would propose we do that at the end of the meeting, because right now Abby's not here and Toby's not here. So we're going to need to nominate somebody to the policy committee from this group, and then I can reach out to that person and Abby to see when a good date is to review the B section policies.
All right, moving on, old business. MSAD transition plan.
So you all approved a transition plan on, I believe you approved it on March 7 or 6. That was ahead of the relaxing of face masks for the change in the CDC guidelines. That plan was specific to, I'm trying to bring it up here on the board so that we can see it, to the relaxed measures that we are recommending, and it did also have a section in there that recommendations that have not changed. Since then, a lot has changed with respect to when you approved the optional masking. Aroostook County had just gone into the yellow, which is a low transition rate for the county. We moved back to a red for a little while, and now we're in green, and we've been in green for now 2 weeks, 2 cycles, as is, I think as of today, 96% of the country, which is wonderful. In meeting with the school nurses, we feel that now is a good time to further relax measures with respect to social distancing, not wearing masks. We're pretty soon, we're gonna start opening windows as soon as that white stuff is gone and it's not frigid out. We're gonna be spending more time outside. It doesn't seem like in a low community spread transmission rate with optional masking, it just doesn't seem like the physical distancing thing makes any sense at this time. So the recommendation at this time is to relax physical distancing. The CDC has retired their guidance. The last time they updated their school guidance was January and has not touched it since. What they've done at the CDC, so if you go to CDC, US CDC, they've moved completely to this county designation. So basically green, yellow, red, and if you're in the low, follow these guidelines. If you're in the yellow, follow these guidelines. Nowhere in those guidelines, which is now the new guidelines as we understand it, does it have any language about physical distancing. So if you just go to low, for example, the recommendations are to stay up to date with your COVID-19 vaccines and get tested if you have symptoms. Those are the recommendations. And then they go on further to say optional masking if you want to. So without the CDC guidance, and by the way, Maine CDC is basically saying whatever US CDC says. So without specific guidance to physical distancing, low community transmission, at this time we're recommending that we relax physical distancing. We will still follow all of the SOP rules, which is when we have a positive case, reporting it, telling those individuals that they need to isolate for 5 days, get a negative test to return. Those things still are going to be followed. We're still going to be doing everything else with respect to if you're sick, stay home. If you're sick in school and we see you're sick, we're going to send you home. So those type of things that are related to any illness, not just COVID-19, are still going to stay in place. But the physical distancing we're recommending goes away. And in consideration of that motion, if the board so chooses, I would also ask that maybe we can add to that motion and to approve further relaxed measures as recommended. So if there's something we're going to further relax, I can send you all a notice that we have this recommendation to further relax something, and notify you. I'm just going to give you a kind of a heads up. We're taking a hard look right now at pool testing and its effectiveness, and this is a conversation that we had with Dr. Hart, or the school nurses had with Dr. Hart today. We may be coming to you with a recommendation in the future about no longer pool testing. That might be an example of one, just based on some of the things that are happening where we're not getting accurate data. So that's for your consideration, so to approve the relaxed measures and further measures as recommended.
Question, Ben?
Yep.
When you say "and further measures as recommended," does that suggest that further relaxation could be implemented without board input, based upon a recommendation from
CDC, school health advisor, school nurses? Throughout this entire pandemic, the district has never made any recommendations against CDC, school health advisor, school nurses. So all future recommendations would be based on those recommendations, the experts.
The difference is that there wouldn't be direct board involvement. It would be done by the experts.
Correct. For relaxing measures.
Right. I'm not crazy about that. We're all done with COVID, but I'm afraid that COVID's not done with us. And let's hope that, we've seen the worst of it, but in the United Kingdom today, there are more COVID cases than there ever have been under the BA.2 variant. And who knows what's coming around the bend for us. And so I think it's important for the board to have direct involvement in this. I shudder to think that we should have to go back to where we've been over the past 2 years. But I don't want to abandon, in my opinion, the board should be directly engaged in each step, because it's really important. And it's difficult, obviously, it's very controversial, but I think it's worth, so I guess you haven't got a motion on the floor, but I'll,
Somebody wants to make a motion, we'll go ahead and enter into official discussion. Gary?
Numbers participating in pool testing dropped since we did away with the masks?
They've been dropping steadily.
Not to mention, I mean, everyone that had COVID, but you don't participate in that for 3 months anyway, so the numbers must be pretty low.
Yeah, and we had an episode last week where our test results were lost. They were lost here. They were lost not by us, by the company, the courier. They were lost here. They were lost at the elementary school. They were lost in Madawaska. Reliability has become an issue. We're getting positive pools, and we're testing 40, 60, 80 kids. Follow-up testing, not finding any positives with follow-up testing. So it's become an equity problem. It's losing its luster.
The Omicron variant, and we expect BA2 will probably be similar, is difficult to detect using the tests that we have. Not just the antigen tests that we use here and that we use for pool testing, but even the PCRs. It can be very difficult to determine. And with pool testing now, when we used to send our results on Tuesday, within 24 hours we had results of pools. Now it can be as late as Friday. So now you've got students getting ready to go for the weekend. By the time they get back, their period of contagion could well be over. So it's just not reliable anymore. And we're not going to do it like this. You know, we want the weather to get warmer. We want to be able to ventilate our classrooms and our buildings. We want families to be able to do that as well, spend more time outside. So we are looking at moving away from that because of the unreliability. And this lab fiasco, where they log receiving our tests, but then they can't locate them anywhere in the lab. So that was all done. And what's happened is people are losing trust in the process, and that's why we're seeing people withdraw from the testing. So it really is becoming an exercise in futility. And when you get positive pools and you retest everyone, and there isn't a positive in there, that's an issue.
So when you hear your school nurses say, let's do away with that, you have your health advisor supporting that. I mean, that's, for me, that's clear.
We're also enjoying great communication, according to the school nurses, from parents, saying, I'm keeping my son home, you know, he's got a sore throat, he's experiencing some dizziness, he's got a runny nose, we're gonna get a home test. And so that is really happening. In fact, the school nurses today that we met with said they're discovering more positives through homeschool communication than they are through pool testing. So that's a very positive development.
So I'd make a motion to relax physical distancing requirements and to allow the administration to do away with pool testing when they see fit.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Moved by Gary, seconded by Mrs. Bazin.
That was physical distancing and then pool testing as based on the nurses.
The administration wants to.
We're thinking about after April break.
So, you know, one thing I'd like to remind everybody is, I think we've been heavily involved as a board all throughout this process. Maybe a little bit more than I've been comfortable with, and probably administration's been comfortable with. We need to give administration and our nursing staff, or give them the flexibility to move as needed without having us loom over their shoulder, which has seemed to be the theme the past 2 years. Just to reiterate what Ben was saying earlier about us or them always recommending to the board whatever the CDC had recommended. I don't think there's going to be any deviation from that. If the CDC says all of a sudden there's some massive outbreak, that's, you know.
We have to put masking back. I'm taking that back to you guys. That will be a board decision.
Now.
Well, but that's where we've been. It's been the board's decision, and we've been basing that on CDC and medical guidance. I mean, that's
Right.
been the decision.
It just seems we're in a period of, I don't want to say lack of guidance, but it seems to be light on guidance because we're going in the right direction. I think, when we start heading the other way, that's when guidance starts to kick back in and they have new recommendations and that type of thing, so.
Well, you mentioned earlier, springtime is, well, supposed to be right around the corner. We'll be opening up windows if we haven't already.
And I hope we can
Everybody will be
avoid
getting
what's
outside.
happening in Europe right now, I hope somehow. But the trend has been what happens there comes to us shortly thereafter. So let's get through the school year first.
Very good.
Can you just clarify, when you said the administration decides, the administration will base their recommendations on CDC, the doctors, and the nurses?
Yeah.
I understood Gary's motion to be tailored to address the pool testing issue,
Right.
which I'm fine with. I think that makes perfect sense.
Because you weren't comfortable with all the other measures.
Yeah.
So, it was too specific.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of Gary's motion to approve and revise the COVID-19 transition plan to remove physical distancing requirements and to approve further relaxed measures as needed?
No.
And to approve,
No,
and
no,
to
no.
allow administration to do away with pool testing when they see fit.
Very good, what Ben said. All those in favor? None opposed. Motion passes. Okay, moving on to new business.
Under items for information, we did have an adjustment for a resignation. You should have had a letter on the side of your packet that was just given to us today. It's addressed to Mr. Coletta and Mr. Sirwa. I'm writing to inform you that I will not be returning for the 2022-2003 school year as both VRMS intervention, part-time, as well as alternative education, adult ed, part-time. I want to thank you for the opportunities. This letter comes from Alexa Massey. Alexa has been a valuable member of the team, willing to go above and beyond. So as she said, she's working in this building, she's working in the Chippy, she's coaching. It's going to be tough to see her go, but she's ready to move on to other things.
During these exit interviews, do we survey the person leaving, asking them, for what reasons? I mean, a lot of them are personal.
Yep, so what I do is I offer a face-to-face, or I offer a exit interview, which is a Google survey.
Sure.
And that's one of the questions, is, what was positive, what was negative, just to get some feedback on all of that.
Very good. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Sarah, seconded by Gary. Any discussion? All those in favor? Graduate? Motion passes.
For transfers, you should have 2 transfer letters, just for your information. We have approved the transfer of Alexandra Banfield has been approved to transfer in her current position as the math interventionist. So she is hired under one of our ESSER grants to do math intervention in this building. With Donna's announcement of her retirement last meeting, Alexandra has applied for the transfer to that math position, and that's been approved. So we have a certified math teacher going into a math classroom at the high school, which is wonderful.
Thanks.
The second transfer that we have approved is more of a technical transfer. We had a part-time bus driver doing the technology run every day, and that bus driver has since transferred to be our trip driver. So in speaking with Peter and the team, we felt like that part-time bus driver was really doing full-time work, so we allowed one of our full-time staff to apply for that. Essentially, this person is transferring the students to the tech center, coming back here, doing their cleaning responsibilities, then transferring the juniors in the afternoon, so doing that bus run as part of their daily responsibilities. We had Gerald Raymond apply, and we've approved that transfer for Gerald as well.
Ben?
Yep.
Alex Banfield's position, was that a 1-year ESSER? It was 3 years, so is it opening up?
We have it open right now. Yep.
Okay, do we have a motion to accept the transfers as presented?
Do we have to vote?
We don't usually.
No?
Oh.
Sorry,
He's the boss.
Oh,
Thank you,
he's the
Rick. Knocking off some of that rust from missing that last meeting.
For new hires, we have 2 announcements. The first one is a recommendation that's being brought to you by Mr. Nichols and Mr. Doucette. They are recommending Madison Sose as the VRMS softball coach.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Gary, seconded by Sarah. Any discussion? All in favor? None opposed. Motion approved.
And the second one should also be one of the side letters that I put as an adjustment today, and it's an email from Mr. Sose to myself. They're recommending Andrew Daigle as the new CHS VRMS nighttime custodian. Part of the conversation that we have had with Andrew is that we would like him to get his bus license within the year, so that we can have another driver behind the wheel. So the recommendation is for Andrew Daigle.
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved by Gary, seconded by Sarah again. Any discussion? All in favor? None opposed. Motion passes.
Our current openings, we have the district technology integrator. I believe we have 3 applicants, and we will be interviewing this week for that position. All of them are in-house applicants, teachers that are interested in that position. We have the Fort Kent Elementary 4th grade teacher, and that's due to Amber DeVoe transferring next year to RISE because of Lori Roy's retirement. And I believe, as of today, we have 5 or 6 applicants for that.
Wow.
So Mr. Netto will be moving forward with getting his committee together and interviewing soon for that position.
Those in-house?
No, those are all out. Yeah. We have a VRMS special education math teacher, and that's due to Maureen Charette transferring to the elementary school. That's open that position, and I believe right now we only have one candidate for that. So we're going to hold off and see if we can get some more candidates before moving forward. And you can cross out number 4. We filled it today. The only thing that would need to be added to that would be our math interventionist, which was not listed, but it is a vacancy. And I think that's it.
Good. Board member standing committees?
You have a list of the standing committees, and I've highlighted board members that are no longer with us, and the committees that they served on, and we would need to replace this for the balance of this year until we take this up again in August for consideration. So for Finance Committee, Mr. Sibley's on the Finance Committee, and he was with Mr. Mckenzie, so we need to fill that. I believe the chairman can nominate people if people do not volunteer.
Try not to go down that road.
Could I suggest that Chairman talk with the new members and ask them where their interests might lie, educate them a little bit about what their responsibilities might be, and
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We,
maybe we could do
these are
that.
obviously, yeah, I mean, this is something maybe that should be discussed on the side, but
Yeah.
Obviously, these committees are very important.
The only one, and maybe what I could do, what I could offer to the new board members is kind of give a summary of what the responsibilities are via
Yeah.
email. The one, though, that I would like, there's 2 that I would like to, there's 3 that I would like to fill today. Well, I'll tell you what, Finance Committee, there's no rush for that. Negotiations Committee, there's no rush for that. Vocational Advisory, so that's the committee that represents SAD 27 on the St. John Valley Tech Committee. So there's an advisory board, and it's made up of it used to be each superintendent from each district, now it's just me, along with Lucy and Giselle, and then one board member from each of the 3 SAUs. We're trying to approve a budget shortly for the St. John Valley Tech so that Lucy can finalize budgets. And we would like somebody to serve SAB 27 on that. Your commitment to that is, I think, 6 meetings a year, and usually 4 of them are around budget season. So I think we have 2 meetings left, one to approve the budget and one to kind of just cap off the year. The meetings are usually around 4 o'clock or 4:30 in the afternoon and last about an hour. And we do have Zoom option for those meetings as well, if somebody wants to consider that one.
So is it appropriate to say now that that's something I'd be interested in?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't know, is this something that has to wait?
No, yeah, if you would like to do it, no one's gonna fight you.
Okay.
If you want to just let us know which committees you're interested in at this time, where we have vacancies.
Okay, I would
Go
be
ahead, let us
interested in the
know, we'll make-
vocational.
The vocational?
Vocational advisory.
Very good. Vocational Advisory Committee, Policy Committee. Obviously, policy is one
Policy
of
is-
our primary
Policy is the
missions.
other one, just because I wanna set a date to go over B section. Super interesting, you sit with old policies and you get the new ones with revisions, it's riveting stuff.
Eric just raised his hand.
Oh, I saw it.
If you are a detailed person and are engaged in policy work, I would encourage you to step up to that policy, to that
I
committee.
mean, that's pretty much the nature of this body, right? If we're not keeping our policies up to date and making sure we're kind of going by those as a district.
I don't know why I can't stop looking at Dave.
Yeah, well, it would be the first time I've had to deal with detailed stuff. That's really not very riveting. No, I'm happy to serve on the policy committee. I'd like to serve on the Valley Unified Committee too. That's an interest I have.
And
depending
that
on-
would be the 3rd one that we're going to need somebody. And that one actually has to be an appointed member, so you would all have to make a motion to appoint and vote on it.
I'll make a motion to appoint Dave to the Valley Unified Board.
Second.
Moved by Sarah, seconded by Gary. Any discussion? Motion on the floor is to select Dave Susie as our replacement Valley Unified Regional Service Center Board Rep. All in favor?
And Dave, we have a meeting next week.
Okay.
Materials are going out tomorrow. And what I can do for the remainder is I can summarize what the responsibilities are for the remainder of those and see next meeting if we want to appoint at that time.
That works.
So we can, we've already got a volunteer for the Policy Committee and the Vocational Advisory Committee. We're good? We're good.
Shannon will be on vocational and
Very good.
Dave on policy. Thank you all.
Okay, item C, 2022-23 Budget Workshop number 2.
It's Lucy time.
Talk about riveting.
In front of you, you have a couple of small packets, one with a paperclip, and one that's just stapled and has a pink and blue. So, we'll start with the one with the paperclip. So the budget process really starts in the fall. I start gathering all the information and I build it with the help of administrators and teachers and anybody who hasn't, I gather input from multiple sources and then I build it. I usually start with pricing, salaries, and then I move on to other things, like maybe adding the supplies needed and the equipment and whatnot. If you look at number 1, this first little sheet, this is what I call the super summary. So the budget is built on 11 cost centers. The Department of Education determines what categories I must use to present the budget, It determines what belongs in each categories and what types of expenses and basically how to code everything. So this first sheet is presented by the 11 cost centers. So the first cost center, for example, is regular instruction. So that cost center includes anything that happens in the classroom. So your teacher salaries, benefits, and health insurance. It includes all their materials, all the supplies that are used for the students. It includes a subcategory for gifted and talented. So we have a small program that deals with those kinds of. So that's the cost center 1. Cost center 2 is special education. So special education encompasses anything to do with the special education program, including your physical therapists, speech therapy, social work. It includes the special ed classroom, anything to do with IEPs, special ed teachers, and those kinds of programs. The third one is career and technical education. Years ago, we used to have a section in our budget that included our costs, our share of the St. John Valley Tech Center. They have since received their own funding. So this cost center is really in the event that they must exceed the funding that they need to run their program, then we would have a share of additional local funds. Right now, we're projecting that to be 0, but we have not yet approved the Career Tech Center budget. So in the event that it gets approved that we need to contribute more than their funding, then I would come and update this line. The fourth cost center is other activities, so that's basically your co-curricular and your extracurricular. So your math clubs, your drama club, your extracurriculars, all your sports and activities, your soccer, potential football, all of those costs. The student and staff support is anything to do with supporting the classrooms and the teachers. So your guidance, your library, instructional materials and supplies. It includes your instructional, your technology, instructional technology. It includes assessments. So if you have to run your testing, those kinds of. So that belongs in that cost center. The next one is system administration. That is your central office and your school board. So the stipends that you will all receive and any cost. So this also includes the legal costs that would fall under that category. And I also have a, I can't think of the word, contingency. So out of all the budget, I have one line that has contingency, it's in that section. And central office. So all of the superintendents, my salary, central office staff, and the running of the central office. The next one is school administration. This is your school office and your principals, your secretaries, and their offices. The next one is student transportation. That's anything to do with busing and or vehicles needed to provide transportation. Your facilities maintenance is anything to do with our buildings. School lunch program, anything to do with our lunch program. So your breakfast and lunch. And continuing education is our Valley Unified Continuing Education Program. So those are the 11 cost centers that we are mandated to separate or divide our budget and present it in certain format. So your columns that you have is, column number 4, that is the budget that was approved last year. The column number 5 is the current proposed draft budget. And you'll notice that it totals to $13,822,530. Column number 6 is the difference between last year's budget and the current proposed budget. Column number 7 is the increase over last year, the percent increase over last year. I've made some notes of what happened to generate maybe an increase. So the majority of it is salary adjustments, your health insurance. I always start the first draft of the budget with a 10% increase in health insurance. We've historically had 13%. In the last few years, we've had 0%. So we've been notified last week that the highest increase would be 8%. but we'll get our actual percent for our district hopefully this week or next week. And when I do, I will update accordingly. And then 10, the column 10 is the change since the first draft that we presented last month. So that's your super summary, and then we'll go to the next. The number 2 gives you a little more detailed version of that. So each blue line you should be able to find. So the first blue line on page 2 should match what you see for the regular instruction that you saw in your super summary. And then the breakdown within. And for regular instruction, for example, I have to code the expenses based on certain grade levels. So anything to do with grades 3 to 8 is one category. Anything to do with grades pre-K to 2 is one category. And grades 9 to 12 another category, and gifted and talented. So I have 4 sub-categories within regular instruction. And each of one of those categories, I have to divide the salaries, I have to divide the benefits, I have to divide the health insurance. So there's multiple codes. So I've summarized them in groups of types of expenses so that you don't see a 300-page report, you have a 10-page report. And then on the right-hand side, the very last column, again, I've made a few notes of what the differences are as compared to the prior year. I won't go line by line unless you want me to. The third sheet is then, what I do is, the first super summary was by cost center. This sheet number 3 is by types of expenses. So if you look at the first line, total salaries in the entire budget is $7,782,220, which represents about 56% of our budget. So the first 3 lines, your salaries, your health insurance, and your salary benefits, which are your FICA, retirement, your workers' comp, total 75% of our entire budget. And then I go down by different types of expenses, overall budget. And then you've got two columns of percentages. Column number 7 is the percent of that category as of the entire budget. So for example, the salaries is 56% of the entire budget. And then if you look at column 10, the change since the first draft has been a 3.4%. That might be, sorry, that's a 3.4% change, not first draft. It's an increase from the prior year. So it gives you an idea of the types of, and what the bigger expenses are. So if you look down and through, each line or each type of category is like 1 or 2 or 3% of the entire budget. The majority of our budget is salaries and benefits. Sheet number 4. Feel free to ask questions as you go along. I understand that it's a lot to take in, and I will leave these with you to absorb and to email me questions if you pass them over on. So the first 3 ones were based on the expense side of the budget. I always say there's 2 sides of the budget. One is, what do you need to spend it on? And where's the money coming from to cover it? Legally, we're not allowed to go in expecting that we're not going to have enough money to do what we're doing. So we have to identify how are we going to fund the level of services that we're going to provide. So your legal sheet number 4 identifies all the different sources of revenues for funding that we can anticipate or that we estimate. So we look at, the first is receipts, is what can we bring from the carry forward from prior year. So I look at our current budget for 21-22, try to estimate what I think we're gonna end up the year with, and what we can apply towards this year's budget, and also look at what we carried forward from the prior years, and to see what we can bring forward. We never spend 100% because ideally, what happens is we have to have a cushion in the event that we don't end up collecting all of these, or that the Department of Education decides that they're going to curtail some of the funds that they initially said they would, and that has happened to us in a few instances. The second section that is the local revenue. The local revenue has different categories that we break into. One is the local allocation. So I'll cover that with this sheet here. The Department of Education has a funding formula, basically. They have a pot of money, and they run it through a formula that has specific categories, and every school district in Maine, the funding is run through this formula. It takes into account your enrollment level, and it takes into account your change in enrollment for prior year, your level of staffing. It takes into account your regional, how you're situated, how far your next, your closest elementary school is. So there's all kinds of different things that they take into account to kind of form a puzzle and find what makes your district unique as compared to other districts. And the funds change based on certain levels, and in the end, you end up with a very customized funding stream that is ideally fair to everybody in Maine. So from this sheet of the funding for, we call it the 8279, which is the name of their report, it determines as a school district providing the minimum level of education, you should spend at least this amount of money. It by no means is meant to cover all of your expenses. It's strictly a funding formula, a means of the department distributing the funds that it does have. And then based on your needs in the local districts, then you go and determine if you need additional funds from your taxpayers over and above what else you can collect in different areas. Other revenues include tuition and fees that you can charge to districts that tuition their students to this district. For example, Allagash, Eagle Lake, Winterville, and unorganized territories all send students to our district, and we charge them tuition, excuse me, we charge them transportation. If they take part in any of our special education programs, we charge them appropriate fees for doing that. If they were part of our district before, and as part of the withdrawal agreement, they have a debt service arrangement for clearing their debt, that's part of the revenues that we anticipate, those kinds of things. So the second section it identifies tuition and fees that we anticipate. Other local costs may be interests, it may be food service, and the food service program is different than what it was in the previous few years pre-pandemic. Pre-pandemic, the food service program had, we had different levels of contributions where if you were a family of a certain income level, you may have to pay full price for the student meals, or a reduced price, or you may have an income level that provided you free meals. The department has since, or the state of Maine, I guess, has since approved free meals for students. During the pandemic, they were reimbursing our meals based on a higher cost. In the upcoming year, they will actually reduce their contribution. There's still free meals, but the department will give us a little bit less funding. So what you're going to see here is that although I anticipated we're not going to collect monies from the parents, we're going to collect more from the state, but it'll still be a little bit less. Self-insurance funds for technology. So when we have one-to-one laptops, in order for students to have some kind of an insurance, we self-insure and we charge every student or every family $40 per unit, and we set that money aside, and that money is used to repair or replace and whatnot. So that's what that means for the self-insurance funds. Building rental revenue, in the last couple of years, we have not rented our buildings out because they were closed to public. So I really don't know if they will come back, or at what level they will come back, if people will start renting again. So I haven't, I'm not counting on any revenue this year. If we do, it'll be set aside. The CHS roof fund, when we replaced the roof in 2008, there were some funds left over. We have earmarked that for future roof replacement. We're in need of repair, and we have a 2 or 3 year plan. This is part of year 2 of that plan. So we have the expense on the expense side of the budget, and we're going to use the funds to offset it. Miscellaneous is just minor ones that we typically receive every year. So the state revenue section is the state portion of their funding formula. So this year, we're actually anticipating we're gonna get $167,000 more than we did last year. We do get funding for being part of a Valley Unified Education Service Center. We get 45,800. And then Adulthood Subsidy. The Adulthood program does get a subsidy. It's a little bit less than prior year. The lunch subsidy, this year, when you're gonna notice a big difference in change there, because last year, during the pandemic, the lunch program operated under what they call the summer program, which was a more relaxed form of operating. So even though it looks like we were spending $170,000 or we were receiving $170,000, that was really the pandemic level, and it was a year round. This year, the $16,000 is reflecting that it will revert back to a true, just a summer program, a 6 or 8 week program. So that's why it's decreased by that much in the revenues. And the last line is the lunch subsidy, our true lunch subsidy. Normally, you're gonna see an increase there. That's the increase that it's now free to the students, so the state will kick in more funds. So overall, we are anticipating total receipts to cover our budget. In doing so, we do need additional local funds. The last sheet takes all of this information and puts it into, what does that mean for the mill rate? For the anticipated mill rate? So if we were to take this budget to the towns today, we would be looking at a change in mill rate of about 0.67 change in mill rate, a mill rate of 12.51, an average mill rate, which would mean, for example, if you look at the column with a red box around it, that highlights your increase or decrease from prior year. So Fort Kent would have an increase of about 7.8%, which would be 234,000 roughly. New Canada would be an increase of about 5.9%, so 18,005. St. Francis would be an increase of 4.4%, so about 14,000. St. John Plantation would be a 4.1% increase, so just under 10,000. And Wallagrass would be 8.9% increase, about 42,007. We're not ready yet. We're still waiting for some information, and we still, we constantly analyze and see, have I duplicated something, have I made changes, and I'm constantly, these numbers change from day to day. So, but if we were to go today, this gives us a snapshot of where are we today. The last sheet, number 6, kind of shows you what changes we've made since the last time we brought it to the board. So our preliminary budget was $13,901,000 on March 15th that we brought. Since then, we've got an increase in the quote to purchase a new bus. The cost of a new bus has increased by $9,600. Technology, integrated health, I hadn't forgotten or neglected to include it in the budget, is now in the budget. That's salary and benefits. And it's going to be either right now it's showing as a contracted position, but that doesn't mean that we can't hire someone. It just means that the funding is included in the section. The cost of the night custodian to replace the one that transferred to day shift. We had 2 on our curriculum leader committee. We have 2 additional members, so we'll need to add the stipends that go along with that. When we record our transportation costs, we record it all under the transportation lines in the cost center. And then what we do is we apply the cost of the trip to the appropriate sections in the budget. So I then take costs to, what does it cost to take our soccer team and our math team, and I put that to I had costed the trips, but I had neglected to reduce the transportation line accordingly. I've put in a slight increase to the electricity. I'm sure you've all seen it in your own homes this winter. January, February, March have been a tremendous increase. Our bills here for the district electricity have almost doubled in those months. So this is, I think I have overall probably about a 10%, because I think they'll increase for 3 months and then go down again. But it's a hit and miss. Again, it's something I'm gonna keep an eye on and update if I need to. We had pricing for a certain software that came in high. We've since received, actually AnnMarie was able to negotiate quite a lower priced version of it, so we've saved about $12,000. We've reduced some of the budget requests. We've got better pricing for the technology that we're gonna upgrade. Cabling projects, we're actually gonna use E-rate funds to fund those, so we've taken those out of the regular budget. We had a software that was actually prepaid this year for 3 years, so we don't need a cost in the next budget or the following one, so we've removed that cost. We had a couple of positions that we had put in as placeholders. We've since reconfigured what we're planning on doing, so we've reduced or removed 1.5 of those positions. And then I had miscellaneous other adjustments that I had made before I started keeping track of itemized stuff. They're captured in that one line. And then we've been notified that we were eligible and have applied for a child care grant through our adulthood program. I don't know if you're aware, but the Chippy Center is actually now a daycare and can provide daycare services. So we're going to be generating some revenue, and this was a grant that we were able to take advantage of. So the change from last, a couple weeks ago to today, we were able to decrease our projected budget by $78,000. That's our initial, that's our draft number 2, and more changes to come.
Lucy, healthcare, you said you budgeted 10% as a placeholder. Past couple of years, we've come in at 0%. If it were to come in at 0%, what kind of a?
We could save probably 150 to 175,000.
Just
if it comes in at 0% or a low percent. SAD 27 has fared really well in the past few years, so we're hoping. And that would reduce the mill rate. I would be able to reduce the budget by like, let's say 150, and that would reduce the mill rate probably by 0.3. Or more.
Does the board have any guidance for us where we'd like to see us target that mill rate? I would love to come in at 0 every year. We offer salary increases, energy prices, costs are going up. I don't know that 0 is realistic, but if the board feels otherwise, as we prepare that third draft for your consideration.
One thing that I haven't mentioned yet is on the mill, on the sheet that shows the mill rate, on the left-hand side in blue, in 21-22, we actually received more state funds than what we had planned for in the 21-22 budget. We had mentioned it at the time, 21-22 budget, but by the time we had to go to referendum, the numbers were not in, and we couldn't. So what we have is an article in the budget that said, should we receive additional state funds, we're going to set it aside for, and then we had a couple of things. In the meantime, in the last month or the month before, this board actually voted to take half of that allocation, which the total allocation was $236,000, and set aside half and put in a general reserve account, and the other half towards a reserve to reduce future tax assessments. So reducing future tax assessments can be done using half of the funds, which is about $118,000. That's something that the board could decide to use and apply towards this budget, should they wish to do so. And that can be done at the next board meeting when we have a true figure of this is what we're,
Yeah, I'd say let's see how our health insurance premiums look like, then we can resort to reallocating those funds as needed.
It'd be nice to be under a 0.5%.
Yeah.
I agree.
Do we know what they put in for a place number? Because haven't they done that at the time?
I don't know. With the unknown costs of the heating oil fuel for the buses, they all use diesel, and the electricity costs. I think it is prudent to leave some in reserve, because once it's in reserve, you can always throughout the year, if we find the costs exceed what we had planned, then we can always transfer some funds from reserve to offset those rising costs. If you don't need them, they still say reserve, and they don't get touched. You can't move anything out of reserve without water fuel, so that's something that would be considered. That's why I didn't put a really high increase in electricity and diesel fuel, is I don't want to overestimate to the point where, you know, we raise the mill rate to an unreasonable amount, but you need to know that there's still an avenue in the event that, you know, we do have a contingency. The contingency in the budget is $75,000. That can go a long ways, but that's also the contingency for a leaky roof, or, you know, if it's not something, broken windows, a boiler fails, and those kinds of unplanned events.
Thank you, Luce.
Anybody have any questions for Lucy? Or me, and then I'll just defer back to Lucy.
Can I add a comment?
Yeah.
Just a quick comment, that through efficiency main, we were able to replace every one of the light bulbs in our district. There's like 5,000 light bulbs that have been replaced to LED, consuming about 1/3 of the electricity that we did prior. So I'm anticipating that the next light bill will probably reflect, I'm not gonna say it's gonna be a reduction, but I think it's gonna be a little bit more stable than what we've had, because we've got approximately 4,000 bulbs replaced already in our district. So we were able to replace those through efficiency main at a very inexpensive cost for the bulbs. And we were also able to work out some process through Northern Maine, wherever your transit site is for in Frenchville, that they're actually receiving all of those light bulbs, the whole light bulbs for free. So it's an amazing project for us to be able to do that, and I think that on the budget side, that it's going to reflect the savings in our electricity. So the lights are on in the buildings all day long. It's a place where we consume a lot of electricity, so I'd like to think that our electric bill is not going to decrease, but hopefully not increase as much as it has been. And that large change has been going on in the last few weeks, where we've changed approximately 4,000 bulbs.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Lucy or Ben?
Apologize for new members being.
Not overwhelming at all.
No,
I'm still overwhelmed.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I think on the DOE website, there's a presentation regarding school funding that we can maybe share with our new board members. It kind of breaks it down a little bit further. It's a lot to absorb in a meeting, especially the first meeting of being on this board. I've been in your shoes. It's not fun. But anyway, we'll do our best to get you all up to speed. So, that being said, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Before you, I just want to follow up on a couple of things. I'm going to look for that school funding presentation and ship that your way, new board members. Shannon, I'm going to get in touch with you about when our next vocational technology meeting is. I'll check with Mr. Lauer tomorrow. Dave, I'll send you and Abby a doodle poll to find out when you guys can meet for a policy committee meeting. And I'll also get in touch with the three of you on those other subcommittees to give you a breakdown on what those are, so that you can weigh in next time. And I think that covers everything.
So the other subcommittees, is it just the people listed here, or does this board work with other people that are part of those committees?
Some of them have other people on committees. There's an educator effectiveness one that involves teachers, and so there's.
And you'll just let us know in
Yep.
your summaries?
Yep.
Okay. Awesome, thanks.
That's all.
Very good. All in favor of adjourning?
Thank you all.